Jerusalem, the capital of Israel, is not only the meeting point of several cultures, but it is considered holy to the three major Abrahamic religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. The first mention of the ancient city is in the book of Joshua in the Old Testament. Following the death of Saul in 1000 BC, David, king of Judah, placed the center of the country's two areas, Judah and Israel, here. In a religious and political sense, Jerusalem became a capital irrevocably when the Ark of the Covenant moved to the sacred place and Solomon, king of Israel, built the first temple. 1,000 years later, the building operations of Herod the Great turned the settlement into a modern, huge city. The old city of Jerusalem has been divided into Christian, Jewish, Armenian, and Muslim quarters since the Middle Ages. Construction of the approximately 4-kilometer-long wall surrounding the city was begun between 40 and 30 BC, using large, hewn limestone blocks in the times of Herod the Great. Certain parts of the wall, which here and there exceed 30 meters in height, date back to the age of the Crusaders, and its constructions were finished by Suleiman I, otherwise known as Suleiman the Magnificent, in the 16th century. Among the wall's 8 gates, the Golden Gate graces the Muslim quarter. The eastern facade of its monumental rampart is marked off by a double-curved embossed bay. One is the Gate of Compassion, the other is the Gate of Repentance. The ancient portal was walled up by Saladin, Sultan of Egypt and Sham, in 1187 when he conquered Jerusalem. According to Jewish tradition, the Messiah will march in through this double gate. The new gate can be found in the Christian quarter, while the Damascus Gate is adjacent to the Christian and the Muslim quarters, and the Jaffa Gate to the Christian and the Armenian quarters. The Lion's Gate and Herod's Gate are in the Muslim quarter, the latter by the palace of the great Roman client king of Judea. The Zion Gate, leading to Mount Zion, is in the Jewish quarter. For the Christians, Jerusalem is the city of Jesus, where according to the Gospels, he died by crucifixion, rose from the dead, and ascended into heaven, from where he will return. This city is the most important place of Christian pilgrimage, so the bloodiest battles were fought for Jerusalem in the Crusades. One of the sacred places of the Christians is the 830-meter-high Mount of Olives, east of and adjacent to Jerusalem's Old City, where we may admire a beautiful view over the ancient city. Several key events in the Old Testament took place on the Mount of Olives, and Jesus marched into Jerusalem from here. Gethsemane is a garden covered with olive trees at the foot of the Mount of Olives. Its name is derived from a Hebrew word meaning oil press. Olive trees can live a very long life. According to tradition, among the trees standing here, 8 are from the age of Jesus. Judas Iscariot hanged himself from one of these after his betrayal of Jesus. The biggest Roman Catholic sanctuary, the Church of All Nations, towers above the garden. It was built in 1922 by the decision of 17 European nations in gratitude that the First World War had ended. In front of the altar is the spot where Jesus is said to have prayed before his arrest. In front of the golden background, the figure of the praying Jesus can be seen. While in the lower right corner of the picture, there is the crown coat of arms of Hungary. The facade of the church is decorated with lovely Byzantine-style mosaics. Its windows are not made of glass, but mysteriously translucent alabaster. So eternal semi-darkness dominates the inside. Near the garden, beneath the ground, lies the tomb of the Virgin Mary. The tomb is illuminated by the candles of men of the Orthodox Church. Halfway down in the stairs of the chapel from the 5th century, the mortal remains of Mary's parents, Saint Joachim and Saint Anne, and Mary's husband, Saint Joseph, are guarded. The representative Church of Mary Magdalene, which is adorned by gilded onion domes, is also located on the Mount of Olives and was built in 1886 by Tsar Alexander III to honor his mother. At the foot of the Mount of Olives, a Jewish burial ground can be found that is the world's oldest still-in-use cemetery. For more than 2,000 years they have buried people here. It is said that the Messiah will come back to the Mount of Olives to resurrect the dead. So gentlefolks had themselves buried here to be close to the Gate of Compassion and to meet the Messiah as soon as possible. Two other celebrated places of Christian pilgrimage, Via Dolorosa and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, dating back to the 4th century, are memorials of the last days of Christ. The nearly 800-meter-long Via Dolorosa, which means Way of Grief, starts in the Muslim quarter at the Lion's Gate and ends where the sacred body was buried after his crucifixion. The remaining 5 stations can be found inside the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, in the Christian quarter. Here, on the highest point of the old city, there was once a Roman temple to Venus. The predecessor of the basilica was built by Emperor Constantine I in 325 AD, after his mother Helena found the tomb of Jesus here and asked for a chapel to be built above it. Later, the original church was destroyed, and the current one was built by the Crusaders in the 12th century. In later times, the building was extended with significant annexes. Today, several Christian fellowships share the most sacred place of their religion, maintaining their own chapels and altars. The place of the crucifixion, which is called Golgotha in Hebrew and Calvariae Locus in Latin, together with the Holy Sepulchre, are the center of the building complex consisting of 5 churches: the Roman Catholic, Ethiopian Copt, Syriac Orthodox, Armenian Apostolic, and Greek Orthodox. At the same time, these places are the last stations of the Via Dolorosa. In the time of Jesus, Golgotha, which means place of the skull, where the skulls of the ancestry rested, was out of town. According to tradition, the skull of Abraham and, what is more, the skull of Adam can be found here. The place of the 10th station, where Jesus' clothes were taken away, is denoted by floor mosaics. The next 3 stations are only a few steps from each other. Here Jesus was crucified, died, and was taken down from the cross. The 14th station, the tomb of Jesus, can be found in the vault under the basilica. The place is called the Angel's Chapel because the angel who brought the news of the resurrection rolled away the stone before the tomb of Jesus. From the chapel behind the tomb, we get into the stone grave of Joseph of Arimathea, the man who buried the dead Jesus. A significant attraction of the church complex is the Catholicon, the Greek Orthodox cathedral. Its stone urn artifact symbolizes the center of the world. Its chapels were devoted to Helena, Adam, the setting of the cross, and the tombs of Jerusalem's Crusader kings. According to Jewish tradition, the Temple of Solomon was built on the Temple Mount in around 955 BC and destroyed by the Babylonians in 586 BC. The mount and the only remaining wall of the temple, the Western Wall, better known as the Wailing Wall, are the most sacred shrines of the Jewish faith. They believe that this was the place where God created Adam from the gathered dust, Cain murdered Abel, and Abraham was about to offer his son Isaac up as a sacrifice to God. But above all, it will be the site of the third and final temple, which will be rebuilt with the coming of the Jewish Messiah. On the square in front of the wall, women pay their respects on the right side, and men on the left, according to Orthodox rules. Visitors place slips of paper containing written prayers or wishes into the crevices of the wall. The symbol of Jerusalem was made of huge stone blocks which were placed upon each other without any bonding material. There are pieces among the blocks that could weigh 100 tons. According to Judaism, the divine presence of God is floating above the wall all the time, which is why these people pray here a lot. The Temple Mount is also a holy site in Islam. On its top, the golden-colored hemispherical cupola of the Dome of the Rock dominates the view of Jerusalem. Erected above the fountain stone, this mosque is the first work of Islamic architecture. The lower part of the stunning, octagonal dome is covered by white marble. Its facade is ornamented by green and blue tiles and glass mosaics, containing quotations from the Quran. The meeting place of the believers is under the dome. This is the Cave of the Soul, or the Tomb of Zechariah. According to the Muslim, the stone preserves the memory of Muhammad's last footprint, while the Christians believe it is the footprint of Jesus. On the southern slope of the Temple Mount stands a silver-domed Muslim sanctuary, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which was built in the 8th century. Another site of the Old City is the Cardo Maximus, located on the border of the Armenian and Jewish quarters. It is a 200-meter-long excavated remnant of the north-south axis of a Roman garrison that was built after the destruction of Jerusalem. The main boulevard was lined with columns of the Corinthian order in compliance with the architectural patterns of the age. Behind it, there were shops and storehouses. An ancient citadel is located near the Jaffa Gate. The Tower of David was built by Suleiman the Magnificent. Today, it is a museum, and it exhibits the relics of Jerusalem's 6 eras. Several locales closely connected with the life of Jesus can be found on the 785-meter-high mountain. After the death of Jesus, the Virgin Mary lived in full retirement and also died here. On the place of her former house now stands the slightly secessionist abbey of the Dormition stands, a monument to the memory of Mary. Besides the extraordinary mosaic floor of the church, the undercroft is also noteworthy. In the middle, there is the statue of the Sleeping Mary with the chapels of the different nations around. In accordance with the tradition, Jesus washed the feet of the apostles here before the Last Supper, and the disciples had stayed here for 50 days from the crucifixion until Pentecost. The cenacle is a Byzantine structure built in the 4th century that could be the site of the Last Supper. In the beautiful Gothic portico, which is currently in the possession of the Muslims, a little pile of stones indicates the place where Jesus could have been during the Last Supper and where he predicted that one of his 12 apostles would betray him. Pilgrims reported that the room was on the upper south side of the apse above the Diaconicon, on the southeast corner of the building. The early Gothic building standing here today was erected by the Knights 10 years later. According to the belief, King David, who died in 960 BC, lies in one of the chambers under the room. The little chapel hiding his tomb is divided into 2 parts by a screen. Women may pay their tribute on one side of the stone sepulchre, which is covered by an embroidered blanket, and men on the other side.